Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab, sponsored by CPA Practice Advisor, with your hosts, Randy Johnston and Brian Tankersley. Hi, everybody. It's Brian, working hard at the lab today, but I thought I would let you know that I do have a quick announcement. We have a giveaway. We're going to be giving away one Ricoh ScanSnap IX 2500 Receipt Edition. We're going to make the drawing right after April 30th. No purchase required. Suggested retail value $599. This is has one-touch simplicity, and our friends at Ricoh graciously have provided it to us. With automatic invoice OCR, detachable receipt guide for small and curl documents, and lightning fast 45-page-a-minute duplex scanning. It transforms paperwork into clean, searchable digital data in seconds. If you want to register, it's cpate.ch/scansnap. The rules are at cpate.ch/rules, and the privacy policy is at cpate.ch/scanner-privacy. And for those of you attending the video version of this, I've actually put on the screen now a QR code that you can capture and use to register for the scanner giveaway. Again, we're giving one away. We're going to give it away again right after April 30th, and again, you must be an accounting professional to win. All the rules again are at cpate.ch/rules. So anyway, with that, thanks for joining us, and here we are back in the lab.
Welcome to the Accounting Technology Lab. I'm your host, Randy Johnston, with co-host Brian Tankersley, and we are so pleased to have a guest today, Eric Eager. Now, I've known Eric for 20 plus years from his old days at a predecessor company, which we'd recommended to you, BizNet. But about 7 or 8 years ago, Eric reached out to me and said, I've got a new idea. And I listened to him and I said, Eric, you could be playing golf. And he said, no, I want to make a difference. I want to help small businesses succeed, and I've got a great idea to do it. And it turns out I think he did. And over the last years, he's been building a platform called 4 Impact Data, the number 4 Impact Data. Eric, welcome to our podcast today. Would you like to give a little bit of introduction on yourself?
Oh, great. Rain, thank you for having me on the show. Again, I am a CPA, and I feel like we've been working on this challenge of how do we change the odds for business owners, and then at the same time, how do we elevate the profession and recognize the work and the impact that we have on businesses. And so we've been working really hard on this. How do we help the shift to advisory? And I think that we have broken the code, crack the code, as they say, and we'll talk more about it. But man, we are super excited to tell people more about it and help the transformation in the profession.
Very good. Well, for our dedicated listeners, you may recognize that Brian and I have recorded a session on 4 Impact Data in the past, but oh my, it is so different. So, Brian.
And it was like 4 years ago.
So different. So Brian, as you may know, has probably reviewed more small accounting products than you have ever seen in the past. And just to give you a perspective on that, we go back to the days of the peach trees. In fact, I was actually drawn into a recent interview from the Privacy Forum, and I couldn't believe that I heard an old Lotus 123 name. I didn't realize he had helped found the Privacy Forum. But again, we're lucky enough to have the long haul with some of these very well-known products of the past, as well as some of the new products of today. So the digits, which we've done podcasts on, and others. So we're really shifting from transactional accounting and financial reporting into something that is quite different. And, the team at 4 Impact Data have landed on the term decision intelligence, but it really probably evolved from a bit of, I'll say, observation by Gartner Group. So, Eric, I might ask you to take a moment and just help our listeners understand what decision intelligence is.
Well, it's going to be, here's the thing, is that it is the next evolution of AI, and it's not replacing AI. it's kind of the things that we've been working on it, as you guys pointed out, for the last 4 or 5 years, and we didn't realize we were building it. But what decision intelligence does is that it takes the combination of AI, data science, business intelligence, and humans' expertise. It literally gives you the ability to codify the experiences of others. But the difference is here is that what AI is what they call probabilistic and text driven. Decision intelligence is deterministic. It will literally tell you statistically, here are the best actions to take, taking all things considered, and it provides you an audit trail of how that decision was come to. So it is really this ability to take from probabilities and what you think to literally what decisions are going to give you the highest probability of success.
And for those of you who have attended a lot of our K2 events, you might recall that over a decade ago, it was 2015 and 16, we were presenting heavily on data science. And for those of you where I actually did your on-site tech assessments, I frequently recommended that you had a data scientist in that window. Now, a lot of this AI that we're dealing with, as you are probably also aware, has been around since the late 50s. 1958 is when AI started. But many people think AI started when ChatGPT was released in November of 22. His granddaughter from New York says, Grandpa, that not be the plan. That is not the plan. That's not how it happened. But in about 2010, we started seeing a lot of these pattern recognition and pattern matching and machine learning, and this evolution into the reporting tools that Eric and his team used because they took as their basis Power BI and wanted to have drillable dashboards in some of the earliest models. That was interesting, but it's now a combination of, for decision intelligence, all of these things of AI and data science and behavioral and so forth. So, Eric, I know you've been looking at the Gartner content on this. What's Gartner have to say on this?
Well, Gartner says that literally, if you haven't heard of decision intelligence, you're going to hear quite a bit about it in the coming years. And here's what it is, the reason being, and the thing that I'm trying to help elevate is that while you're hearing all this AI decisions, the challenge is that it is incredibly powerful, but it's changed. The answers are changing every time you ask a question. It is a black box. And what's happening is that more and more as we move into advisory and these other pieces, it is going to cause, unbeknownst, what we call false confidence in advisory. And they are projecting it's going to cause financial and reputational loss simply from the fact of human bias, ability to critical thinking, and AI sycophancy. It is still, as much as they're trying, it is going to please you. And by
So,
2030, yeah,
so
I'm sorry, go
effectively,
ahead.
we're going to be lemmings running off a cliff because AI said, "Hey, wouldn't it be a great idea if you ran off a cliff?"
Exactly. Now, here's the thing though, AI, if managed correctly and you complement it, it will unleash capabilities, all the positives and the excitement and why I'm excited about it. And these models by 2030, it will be 5 times more trusted. It will be faster in governing decisions than ungoverned decisions. And this is why you're going to hear these things because, and I'll talk a little bit about, why is this happening? Well,
But
what's,
on that point, Eric, I think the good and bad, we've talked about that with our
yeah,
past. All technology can be used for good or bad. But the bad number that we didn't quote for you is that by 2027, 25% of the decisions will actually have financial impact in a negative way. That's a big deal because 2027 is a lot closer than you might think.
well, and I'm glad you pointed that out because sometimes I forget we have audio listeners and not video listeners. So
Yeah.
thank you for pointing it out because that, and I've heard and I've talked to, profession and AI leaders throughout the world, and they say that number may be low, that it can be significantly higher if we don't watch it. Um, so I'm glad you pointed that out. Um, and and so why is this important? Well, what's happening is AI is the world and velocity of business is accelerating way before it's happening so fast that we're all having to react and do things. Well, AI, the way that we make decisions today is that before, we have these analysts that would bring reports to us, and as leaders, we would take all this information and have to prioritize and risk and see what's short term and long term. And then you had to make the call, and then you go hand it down to your operational team. Well, what AI and the excitement about AI, it is surfacing so many options now that you're turbocharging your analyst. Well, what that's doing is that now it is accelerating all these options to leaders, and it still doesn't tell you, it doesn't give you well, all these options for my company, which one takes precedence? What time do we need to implement? What's the trade-offs if we do this versus this? I still have to make those calls, and that's myself and my advisor, because we're always going to have the need for advisors no matter what the technology does. We're still going to need that human advisor, and it's going to cause decision fatigue. And so all of a sudden, we're going to make the call. And now, if you add in AI agents to that, the speed of exit, the beauty of what Randy said, the beauty of it is we can execute with such speed and precision. But the challenge is that you may be heading towards a brick wall, except now we're just going to do it at 100 miles an hour.
Yeah, so the question is bug or windshield, huh?
Well, we're going to make sure that here's the thing, and this is the missing piece. I want to give people hope that this unbridled power, I like Spider-Man, with great power comes great responsibility. Here's the thing, that there is some excitement in that you add the layer of decision intelligence. This is why you see Gartner and everybody. You add that as a layer to complement your AI. And it does is it continuously monitors. It helps you see the emerging risk. It sees the opportunities. And now it's an augmentation of decision confidence. It helps the advisors and the leaders prioritize actions, what timing. And it doesn't replace, it now turbocharges the advisor. And oh, by the way, it raises the confidence level of the decisions. And now the agents can execute. So this can really have the impact that I think we've all been wanting to help businesses with. And we really do have a chance to change the profession.
So effectively, this is the human in the loop, the advisor that is serving as those Spartans at Thermopylae that are preventing the hordes of bad ideas from coming to reality.
Bingo. And this is where I think we have always been business advisors. The CPA profession we've been what I want to call invisible advisors. And this is our opportunity to really showcase where we've been always. A lot of people get in the profession because we really want to help businesses. But we got so bogged down in my history, I'm a tax guy. I got so bogged down that by the time I got everything finished, I didn't have any time left to really help people. And now I really think this is elevating. It's the grand promotion for everybody. Um, Now, a lot of people listening are probably going, I still don't understand what's the difference between AI and decision intelligence. So there's a lot of things. AI is reactive. It only reacts when you ask it a question, and it will answer questions. It's really text oriented. But here's the thing, it's probabilistic. So what that means is every time you ask it a question, you'll get a different answer. But the most important thing that everybody needs to listen, and I think everybody gets, it operates in a black box. You don't know. So if you're growing an advisory firm and you're going AI first, the challenge you've got is that you may have 10 advisors ask the same question and get 10 different answers. And oh, by the way, here's the other thing. Your clients can punch in the same cue and same prompt into AI as your advisors. Enter decision intelligence. It is now proactive. It's constantly probing and seeing the emerging risk, but it's what we call deterministic. So what that means is that depending on the same input, you will get the same outputs, and it continuously learns. We call this codified wisdom. So it's continuously learning, but that's that human advisor in the loop. It literally tracks, hey, what worked, what didn't, and it keeps the advisor in the loop for a point of context. And last but not least, it gives you a complete audit trail. It's transparent of how those decisions, and literally we can get in, it literally creates decision tokens. So at any point in the, things go by, you can see how the decisions were made. This is why I think the accounting profession will be so excited about this possibility, because it fits within our auditability and tracing, but also increases confidence of what advice we're giving to clients.
Yeah, in fact, Eric, when you first showed this to me and the audit trails and how you could track how the AI was making decisions in the platform and how it was showing things over a longer period of time and so on, it's like, this is really smart. And more importantly, it is reproducible. So, your whole codified wisdom, as I've watched your journey on this, Eric, over the last few years, because it was some years ago that you came up with this business GPS idea and used the cockpit in the aircraft as
Yeah,
a guidance system, which again makes great sense if you've ever flown an airplane in particular. It makes all the difference in the world in the way the GPSs work. But this decision intelligence engine has several different tricks, as I would see it, to it. Can you explain that to our listeners?
Sure. So the difference between, like I said, the difference between AI and decision intelligence is it is continuously monitoring. So it has your financial and operational data. And what it does is it looks for signals and trends. And it's not just on one plane, it literally looks across multiple planes for signals. So it can see things happening months at a time. So it begins to uncover these emerging risks and opportunities. Because just to kind of backtrack a little bit, even while we started doing all this, is that we were wondering, we took on this gigantic challenge of why businesses are failing at 50%, 50% are going to fail in the first 5 years. We hear this over and over again. So I went to Randy and said, this has got to change. How in this world does this continue to happen? Well, that sent off a journey of why businesses were failing. Well, they were failing, and I'm sure that a lot of listeners can think, well, it's cash flow. Blah. It really came down to, and I'm glad everybody's sitting down or driving your car, it was because we don't know what we don't know. And what happens is that we have to see, and the primary reason is that with business owners, we see the risk too late and we make decisions after the fact, and then we point on the wrong things. So, what decision intelligence or this codified wisdom is to monitor where you're at, see what the road ahead looks like, and reroute you to the destination. So, see what signals are coming, see the emerging risk, have the GPS kind of thing is recommend the best routes to take. But here's the magic. You always have an advisor in the loop. You have an advisor going, let me measure these things and make a recommendation, work with the business leader. But now you got confidence of how you came to those things. And then you begin to track what actions were executed. Because the other thing Gartner pointed out is that 80% of decisions that are executed never get measured. So you get this teams you execute and you don't measure it. So you have this closed loop of working with your advisor, measuring what, basically documenting what actions were taken in the system and continuously measure those outcomes. And then you learn what worked best. And then it creates this closed loop. And think about that at scale. So now as entrepreneurs and this, guardians, we all don't have to make the same dumb mistakes over and over again. I have a PhD in dumb things to do in business. And so this helps elevate everybody across the board, and it continuously gets smarter, and it continuously helps us guide us and our clients of what's working and what works best, if that makes sense to everybody.
Yeah, so this whole strategy of trying to help business proactively decide And I was reflecting on your mention of KPIs because I've been a fan of KPIs since Harvard introduced those back in 1992. But the KPIs were often incorrectly selected, not measured, not really the right things. It took me better part of 10 years to get the right KPIs for my own NMGI business. And now I'm thinking about it saying, I wonder if I've still got the right KPIs. But in effect, this is not automatically, but it is surfacing the right KPIs, the right actions, and then monitoring those after the fact, which is all a pretty big deal. So, in effect, then you said scale. So, can you explain how this allows advisory to scale?
Um, well, that's a great question because the other thing too is you pointed out we've been after this, solving this problem for about now going on about 5 years now. Well, what we discovered in this process and journey, because we were just dogmatic, we were going to fix this problem, we were going to solve this problem, of how to help our profession. What we realized is that the whole profession, the reason that we're struggling with moving to advisory, it's what we call a confidence gap. And and it makes sense when you look at it, is that you've got, and most people realize this, is 75% of the partners in the profession right now are retirement age. There is going to be a massive brain drain, knowledge walking out the door. At the same time, you've got this next generation of people with advisors. Here's the confidence gap problem. I'm a young advisor and I want to start doing advisory. Well, I've got a major client, a major tax or audit client, a lot of revenue to the firm. I'm afraid to make the wrong decision. I don't know if I have the confidence to make that call. At the same time, the senior partners are going, man, we can't risk this. And so you have the partners that all the knowledge is tied, and so everything's going to go through them. The younger staff are going, I don't want to make the call, so thus I'm going to get this documented and all over the place. So it creates this huge gap of I can't move forward. And enter now the bigger risk is that now all of a sudden, I don't have confidence. I don't want to do this. Here's the bigger issue is false confidence. Now the younger staff and everybody's relying on AI to give me decisions and it's get different answers, doesn't prioritize operating black box. This is a huge risk because now I'd rather have low confidence than false confidence.
Mhm.
Enter the world of decision intelligence. And Randy, I'm sure you have some thoughts on that. What do you think in the profession?
You've got me headed down all sorts of different paths with you here, Eric, because I've said on this podcast before that for advisory to work, I used to think it took gray hair. And fact of the matter is, it's the right tools that really make the difference. Kind of number one observation. Number two, the risk to the firm, as you pointed out, is very high. When I see CPAs and accountants who have great advisory skills, it's a beautiful thing. But there's so many that have been so focused on tax and audit because that's where they were making the money, didn't really have time to do these other tasks. Now, if we can do this at scale, that's also another huge opportunity. Then third, Brian and I will continue to talk to you about different advisory approaches that are out there. In my mind right now, For Impact Data has the most scalable, logical, repeatable advisory offering in the market. And, things are changing quickly, but I can tell you there's a lot of discussion around advisory, of which I have labeled fake advisory, where people are doing client accounting services and financial reporting and thinking it's advisory, and it's not that at all. Or the opposite end of the spectrum, they're doing CFO services and it's not really advisory either. So, this whole tipping point is upon us. And Eric, you've just toned it again with the shift in labor that's going to happen and all this loss of so much knowledge. I'm really concerned about that as well. Now, I think you've written a paper on this topic as well, and I might encourage our listeners to try to pick up that paper. It's called Why Decision Intelligence Will Power the Next Generation of CAS. And, it's almost like I wish I could have you take CAS out of the title there, Eric, but I do understand. that, many of our firms have just been building these client accounting services operations, and they're trying to extend it with advisory, and CAS and advisory are getting all mixed up in the terminology. We're almost going to have to invent a new term. But, for the moment, I'm going to go with decision intelligence for advisory. I think I like that. So,
Oh, man, I like that. I may have to modify the title there.
what's some final parting thoughts you might have for our listeners today, Eric?
Here's the thing. There's a couple things, and there is an approach where there is a lot of nervousness in the profession that our traditional, service line offerings are becoming much more automated. The margins we're starting to see shrink. We're starting to have, it's beginning to commoditize. And I know that people have said, I've heard that storm. We've weathered that storm years before and everything. But I've had the chance to work with Randy and Brian and Barry Melanson and Gary, and a lot of the leading professions, and they are all saying the storm is coming, and it can be gloom and doom or excitement. And I'm on the abundance side and saying this is an exciting time for us. There is now we can unleash the power of our advisory capabilities, our impact. And I'm going to say boldly that, that the accounting profession is going to change the world. And I want to believe that. And so for those who want to, join the movement and join the bandwagon of this is an exciting time, download the white paper. I'd love to continue having conversations because I'm excited about the opportunities that lie ahead for the profession because I really think there's no other profession globally that can change the odds and have such an impact on so many businesses globally. We just had to wait for the technology to catch up to shine a spotlight on the true work that we've been doing for decades.
Yeah.
And so I appreciate your time and thanks for letting me have a conversation
Beautiful.
today.
So, Brian, you've been awful quiet today. Any other parting thoughts from your side?
Well, I think it's very important to address this confidence gap that we have between the experienced partners that have taken risks and have learned from them and the junior staff that are just trying to keep trying to figure out what their career looks like. Okay. And the thing I would say here is that first off, I think you're absolutely right, Eric, that validating the data that comes out of AI and having that human in the loop is an essential part here. And I think that is a significant definition of what advisory looks like to me, because there is some measurement here. This goes back. I mean, I think I was fortunate enough to watch my great uncle coach my father in entrepreneurship when I was a kid. And one of the things I remember my great uncle saying to my dad was, yeah, my great uncle was a very successful entrepreneur and engineer and has, founded a business that now has sales in the hundreds of millions of dollars. I will say that the thing that was so cool about what he said was that he said that, if you make a mistake, for God's sake, tell everybody about it because we don't want to make the same old mistakes. We want to make new and interesting ones. And that's the thing I think that's critical for this because, you don't your partners are very quiet and they don't share where they took risks and explain that and explain the thinking and explain the calculus that's happening in the background. And these staff are sitting out here and it looks like, the partner is some Harry Potter here. No, he's taken a lot of small chances over the years, increasingly bigger, and then he or she's figured out that this is how we do here. And the thing is that we've all been taught that accounting is black and white, but the reality of it is that there are gambles that we have to take, just like when you're playing chess, when you're playing any kind of game with anybody. There is a risk associated with every move you make. And the easiest way to lose is to stop going forward altogether. So very cool, Eric. I love what you're doing. And I agree with you. I think the accounting profession is going to change the world. I think it's going to be different than we all think it is. But at the end of the day, somebody's got to be, like I said earlier, those 300 Spartans at Thermopylae that keep the hallucinations from going through and turning into worse decisions than we could ever dream up as humans.
So, Brian and Eric, such a pleasure to spend time with you. So, one parting thought from my side today. Um, we recognize how much is going to change on the compliance side. And I can tell you that this season just completed on AI tax has been a pretty significant move. We're going to see transactions of all kinds automated in client accounting services, in audit, and in tax. And what that will do for us is give us time for these other activities. And to me, that's a really big deal. So you're going to see me continue throughout the year to recommend advisory platforms, and you'll start hearing me talk more about the nasturtium because I think that's what the accountants are to the profession. A delight having you here today. Join us again for another Accounting Technology Lab. Good day.
Thank you for sharing your time with us. We'll be back next Saturday with a new episode of the Technology Lab from CPA Practice Advisor. Have a great week.